surface it has no depth now. It must be the truth, shallow, and you must know that I can see right through the candy games you play to stay away. Today's the day with me. I love the taste of cool, fresh air. It's safe to say, and I've been there. That's you, babe. That's you, babe. The clouds in the sky. Tell me you'll notice them. Tell me you'll notice them. Tell me you'll notice them.
Oh, yeah. Good evening. Welcome to Tux TV. I'm your host, Jimmy Tux. Gonna stream tonight on my channel, Jimmy Tux TV or Tux TV, and Nitty's channel is also gonna be live streaming tonight. If I get, and Nitty just popped on too. Oh, if you're on Nitty's channel, come and see me over here at Tux TV. Feel free to hop in, Nitty, if you're able to. I'm going to do a little free will talk, cause yeah, aww, that's so sweet, especially from an atheist like you sexy talker, you. Oh, BS, you know him. You know how to harden a atheist's heart just right. Nitty's on Jay's channel. Good deal. And Titan Uranus, welcome. All right, I've got a lot to go over. I've got a Trinity Radio dropped a free will God watch. Before giving up on free will or God, watch this. So I'm going to definitely go over a lot of stuff as fast as I can because I want to go to bed at a decent hour. And that's right. Rush did Rush did do that. He did indeed. Gotta love Rush doing free will. And no BS. It's I'm a little too sober for that kind of talk BS. That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing I was hoping from you, though. All right. I'm gonna do a little Braxton Hunter to start off. He just dropped a video a couple days ago, one day ago, according to this. And I wanted to play a short bit from his, and then I wanted to do some response. And in the clip he's about to describe, he just doesn't understand how an atheist could possibly come up with the things that we come up with that says, hey, you got free will, and God's given it to you. But what God giveth, I think God taketh away. And I'm going to preach to Braxton a little bit about how you can be an atheist with as much biblical knowledge as you can have, as I can have, and just simply don't consider free will even a factor. And the bigger question is, let's make sure that this isn't deception. And then Maybe I'll become a good Christian with a softened heart, like hard-boiled eggs, going back to, hard medium. All right, let's clip this, share this. Gonna go there, and view tab, and there we go.
So, fun coincidence. My family's Catholic. So the reason I'm an atheist is because I actually did a read-through of a few religious texts, and after reading them, I just kind of noticed that there was a lot of contradictions, a lot of stuff in them didn't make sense, and then I kind of went down the rabbit hole of looking into this stuff, and after going into the rabbit hole, I just didn't really have any faith anymore. It's pretty much the story of most atheists. I am nothing special. So thank you for the question, though, and I hope you have a good one.
I like this guy. I like the vibe of this video. He seems like a really nice guy. But he says that he read some religious texts, found some contradictions, and then just found that he didn't have any faith anymore and didn't believe. Well, I appreciate the honesty, but I'm sure he would, I would suspect that he would admit, seems like a bright guy, seems like he would admit that just because you found contradictions in some texts doesn't mean even that those texts are false, much less that the religion is false, or at the very least that God doesn't exist. I don't see how any of this gets you to atheism. It doesn't make any sense to me. If I became convinced today that there were problematic things that were contradictory in the Bible, depending on what those things are, I guess, I don't know that I would, I wouldn't become an atheist. I might change my views about biblical inerrancy or something, but it wouldn't mean that Christianity is false or that God doesn't exist. I used to, when I was younger, I would say as a preacher, I'd say things like, if one word in the Bible is false, it's all false. But ask yourself, was I right? The truth is that doesn't even work logically. If one part of the Bible is false, all of it's false. Now, I don't think it's false, but I'm just saying, that wouldn't even make any sense. It'd be like saying, oh, here's like a world-class math textbook, but there is a mistake on page 147. Oh, well, then nothing in it is correct. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. So I don't understand exactly what's going on here, but the notion that there would be contradictions wouldn't be a game changer. But then on top of that, I'd want to know what those contradictions are. We could talk about it with respect to the Bible anyway.
Okay, how about that? Let me see what the chat just said. What y'all thinking about that? Might be sexist. Oh my goodness, P-Town's here. Oh my. Okay, so I think that was a pretty good point. So let's give, from an atheist, let's give Braxton here a little bit of a taste of, it's not just one error on page 147. Let's say the error is on page 1. Let's say that the page 1, 2, and 3 specifically, Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and Genesis 3 are the problem. And in that, we have an evolution of what I believe is deception, starting especially in Genesis 3:1, that the deceiver is actually introduced, and this deceiver has a boss that allows him to be there. Now, in the Jewish text, there is no Satan, in my opinion. So even though I'm going to heavily rely on Revelations 12:9 to refer to that old serpent, I'm not going to use it in the Christian text. I'm going to use it in the Hebrew belief, the Jewish belief, more so than the Christian belief. But the deceiver is real. And the minute that all three of the Abrahamic religions put their claim that essentially God has made a deal with the deceiver from the very beginning. Now, why is that? It's because I believe human beings have orchestrated a good story, that you don't need any of the you don't need any of the, how do I say, Star Wars is not going to be a great show back in 1977 if there's no Darth Vader. You can't have a great story. It's not going to be loved and beloved, no matter what you do. Every single Disney movie has some variation of an adversary, a boogeyman, the bad guy, bad girl in Sleeping Beauty, for instance, or not Sleeping Beauty, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Like, you have to have the bad guy. You have to have Ursula in Mermaid, right? There's always got to be the bad guy, and that's kind of how you know it's storytelling. So that's my proposal to you, that this is a story. It's made by humans, that there's no such thing as a God. There's no such thing as a Jesus, a son of God, and that there's no such thing as a Holy Spirit, and there's no such thing as a bad guy figure, deceiver. The problem is, I believe I'm going to demonstrate that not only is there a bad guy, that number 4th one, that doesn't exist, but the boss of that one doesn't exist either. So the first claim is that the evolution of deception starts essentially in Genesis 1:4, where the first thing is called good. There are 6 things in Genesis 1 that are called good. If God is the deceiver, let's show the resume. And the first fact of this deception is Genesis 1:4, 10, 12, 18, and 21, and 24. Every single day, 6 times, God declares everything is good. Now, once a deceiver is in Genesis 3:1, this makes one of those 6 times essentially stating not everything is good. So there's an element of, you've made a deal with the bad guy to be in your perfect paradise, in your creation's paradise. And you've permitted them to be there. No matter how you slice it, everything's not good. And in Genesis 1:31, God declares everything's very good indeed. That also can't be true if you've made a deal with the deceiver. If you've essentially created the boogeyman right there at the very beginning. So that's the first path. The second path is, well, actually, I combined 1 and 2, but the second one is God's concluded everything is good. So if it's Satan, the character, or the deceiver, it can't be labeled good nor very good. One of these two things can't be real. It just can't be. It starts right there in Genesis 1:31 and Genesis 3:1. The third is God's unable to tell the truth about in Genesis 2:8. The presence, it's, if this pleasant place, this perfect paradise, there's no doubt that if you invite the deceiver in there, it can't be a pleasant place anymore. You just can't have it both ways. It's only one way. Oh, yeah. Well, get some evidence of a demon, P-Town. Click away your selfies. Click away your selfies. I saw a video today of somebody saying that they saw a demon. It was cute. It was cute. Whose channel was that today? I don't remember. Either way. So, where was I? The fourth path to deception. In Satan starts asking questions, or the deceiver starts asking questions in Genesis 3:1-4. And one of the problems with this, at least from what I was taught from the pulpit, that this is where actually Satan is the liar. The problem is you don't actually have any information to what God tells Eve. He only speaks to Adam, and Eve hasn't even been created yet. So that means that there was a miss on the clarity and the gravitas that Adam is told in Genesis 2:16. And without that instruction directly, it's ironic, in my opinion, that the first person that isn't told directly by God is the one who's deceived. The one who's deceived, the first person to get deceived by a deceiver that shouldn't even be there, ironically. So my question to you is, if we have free will and there's divine hiddenness, to avoid deception, which is repeated a great many times about don't be deceived. There's parables about blind leading the blind. There's mentions of seek and ye shall find. And you'll have so many, so many options in the Bible. Book of James, 1 Corinthians 15, all make some sort of mention of don't be deceived. Now, there's a moment in this book where deception can be prevented. And it's not. It's never. But don't worry. God's definitely going to protect something. And he's going to use a cherubim with a super awesome weapon. A flaming sword. So, doesn't tell Eve, doesn't protect Eve when there is deception. From the pulpit, I was taught that this is exactly what Eve wanted. She was tempted by it. She desired it. Well, I just don't buy that. I think in your book, on page 3, the first person to be deceived didn't hear the information from God. It could have been from any talking entity within the garden. So the fifth path on this resume of not telling the truth, when Eve touches the fruit, she doesn't die. Now God told Adam, if he just touches, he didn't tell Adam anything about touching it, but in the Genesis 1-4, one of Eve's responses is, if we touch it, we'll die. And it's placed in God has said. Past tense, not a direct God told me. It's a God has said. The sixth on this resume of not being able to tell the truth. Eve doesn't die from eating the fruit. Once again, she's supposed to die if it's touched, according to her. You're supposed to die if you eat it, according to God in Genesis 2. The seventh, Eve, having lived, is able to trick Adam, and he doesn't die either. Now, I can certainly understand that when I was a kid, I was told not to play in traffic because I got killed. And there could be a semblance of you'll get killed if you eat that fruit over there. But he didn't die. He didn't. So the 8th on this resume is Adam is alive. He's not dead. This is basically a half, at least the way I was taught from the pulpit, is that when you tell half lies, they're lies. They're real lies. There's no such thing as a little white lie. It all has consequences. And the cause and effect of the clarity, gravitas, lack of everything else that is going on with lack of protection from deception, that you have basically taught a half a lie in, or at least not been able to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help God. So I want to conclude that if God's not able to tell the truth, keep in mind in Exodus 3, there's a moment where God makes free will obsolete. He basically says, hey, you're not going to be able to go. I'm going to set you free. I'm not going to be able to set you free because of the Pharaoh. And then in Exodus 4, he manipulates the free will of the Pharaoh, as if to say, see, I told you so. He wasn't gonna do it. And at that moment, free will has become obsolete in that story. And here's the irony of that situation is, at no point does God take it upon himself to teach in that scenario. At no point in this scenario of Genesis 1 through 3 does God take the opportunity to teach. Not once. God doesn't use any kind of example of love in Exodus 3 and Exodus 4, and he doesn't use it in Genesis 3. It's just a curse. You're cursed. That's it. I smite him. Who cares? Who cares? I'm just going to smite him. And I think the lesson between these two moments of considering whether free will exists from an all-loving, all-knowing, omni-somethings creator is that slave manipulation is occurring right at the very beginning. You're mentally conditioned to accept a slave manipulation mentality. Right there, Genesis 1, Genesis 2, Genesis 3. By way of other free will, the next time we see the example of free will is in Exodus. No, Jerome. Join me at Tux TV. And Nitty might be on later. I promise. Maybe. No, Bro's channel wasn't stolen. All right, where was I? So I want to make the case that the deceiver essentially tells the truth in everything that the deceiver says. Now, why is that? Good cop, bad cop? You can't have a story about a dad who goes to the dark side, but you don't know it yet until the very end. And actually the dad created the son. You can't have a good story where son and dad, basically are at odds with each other until the very end when they ride off into a spaceship exiting a blowing up mini planet that was manufactured. You know, you can't have that final ending without a bad guy going through the entire time. It's just that simple. Deceiver tells the truth. And to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi, from a certain point of view. And here's the thing. I think God in the beginning of this is fully responsible. He is the keeper of that responsibility. He's the keeper of that clarity and gravitas and the protection from deception. Because it basically makes me, anyway, think that the God that Braxton Hunter worships, it makes that guy the boss of deception, the boss of the deceiver. It's just that simple. Your God's the boss of deception. So, to me, from the pulpit, I was taught we blame Eve. And I'm here to tell you, we blame God. I blame God. It was his orchestration of the deceiver in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 3:1. And this causes believing in something full faithfully. It means you're probably deceived. And the moment that the three Abrahamic religions make a deal with that deceiver, there is nothing sacred in the rest of that book. Because at the conclusion of that book, twice it says some variation of deceiveth the whole world. And this includes you, the Christian. And Ray says, yep. I don't know what he was saying yep to, but. So there you go. That, Braxton, that is how. That is how you can say, let's play this again. I believe it was here.
Much less that the religion is false, or at the very least that God doesn't exist. I don't see how any of this gets you to atheism. It doesn't make any sense to me. If I became convinced today that there were problematic things that were contradictory in the Bible, depending on what those things are, I guess, I don't know that I would. I wouldn't become an atheist. I might change my views about biblical inerrancy or something, but it wouldn't mean that Christianity is false or that God doesn't exist. You know, I used to, when I was younger, I would say as a preacher, I'd say things like, if one word in the Bible is false, it's all false. But ask yourself, was I right? I mean, the truth is that doesn't even work logically. If one part of the Bible is false, all of it's false. Now, I don't think it's false, but I'm just saying, like, that wouldn't even make any sense.
Okay, so I got that off my chest. I kind of would like to expand a little bit more on. Somebody just sent me a Discord. I'll join you in a bit. If he has the juice. Yeah, Nitty might narc out on us if he's had too much juice. Or not enough juice, depending on your point of view. But I'd just like to conclude, if we have free will, we can choose to be a slave. And I think that's what this book conditions you to do. It conditions you to think this is good, and following it is good, and following it is enslavement. Because you wouldn't freely choose to be a slave. You just wouldn't. And here's the thing. In the rest of the story of creation, God puts a curse on Adam and Eve. The crafty serpent, that curse is inconsequential. And the next story you have after the story of creation is Cain and Abel. One ends up dead. The other one ends up cursed. So you're basically 0 for 4. You get Seth. You're 1 for 5. And then you got to destroy everything. And I challenge you, if you're going to destroy everything, and you're an omnipotent, you can't really tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help yourself as God. You then will destroy everything, start over, and guess what happens? The very last act of the Noah story is enslaving your youngest son. Once again, no show of love, enslavement. You want us to basically submit to God. Christians will threaten us to submit or else. And if all else fails, they'll forcibly make you submit. Somebody has to be the servant class. And if we start working together, he's going to come down, smite us all, change our language, so we can't be one. That's the lessons in Genesis 1 through 11. Those are the lessons. All right, enough of that. I want to play this clip from 1840 to follow up to that little sermon. I want to give a shout out to this guy because he does a pretty good channel here. Let me turn the chat off. This is kind of a defense for God from my this is a pretty good video essay from a channel called 1840.
As rational as human beings try to be, we are also remarkably unpredictable, and it is nearly impossible to organize human nature upon the same foundations as the nature of math and science. What we love, what makes us happy, what makes us sad, how to build relationships, marriages, communities, and governments cannot necessarily be reduced to a neat set of predictable principles like a math theorem or a chemistry equation. So whether you prefer a religious system built on steady and predictable axioms, or acknowledge that like so many areas that address the human condition, not every system of truth can be organized in such a way, it is a question worthy of exploration. Because religion and religious communities are windows into the human condition.
All right. Uh-oh. What's going on here? What's going on in the chats? Let's go back to the chat overlay here. All right. And then to follow that up, I wanted to play this clip of Jim Gaffigan because it just cracks me up every time I hear it. So,
Catholics and Protestants didn't get along. How did that play out? Yeah. You see those people over there with the almost identical beliefs as mine? I want to kill them. Because my God's all about love. Seeing how Catholics and Protestants.
So there you go. So there you go. Because God's all about love. All about it. All right. I got Pete down to laugh. Yes, that. He's like, that's true. I know. And it kind of goes into my theme. If God preached love instead of enslavement, if he taught instead of cursed, it'd be a whole different story. I wouldn't think that humans did this. Human beings are fully capable of just writing this stuff. All right. One last thing. That's I think this is comedy. This is I think everybody should enjoy this one.
Is a friend or loved one of yours utilizing a bidet? Well, you might be thinking, I bet their asshole is squeaky clean. But you should be concerned because they might be addicted to anal penetration. What is a bidet but hygienic sodomy from Poseidon himself? The only thing penetrating you should be the word of the Lord. Get that water out your back door and get that Bible into your heart.
All right, there you go. There's a little bit of word from the wise. I did like some of the comments here. I did like some of the comments here. It was like, this chick looks like she's hardly on cleanliness. And turgidity and sphincters. The role Jesus plays in exchange. I don't want to read the last. I just don't want to do it. And there's your moment of Zen. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, there you go. There you go. What have we learned? What have we learned today? I believe that it's probably better to just take the Bible as fiction. Take the Bible as a great theological study in old storytelling. And don't be enslaved by it. Please. Don't be enslaved by it. So P-Town says, false. Well, P-Town, get me a picture. You know, I will agree with that, P-Town. If you see the Bible the way I see it, I'm trying to set you free. It's very true. If it came from the God you say it came from, and the Jesus you say exists, and that something that was born of a virgin, then I'll tell you what. You, my friend, the truth will set you free. It feels so free to no longer be what feels less than free is watching a prayer be said on January 6th. That's what feels unfree. A prayer on our Capitol floor from a group of Christian invaders. Onward, Christian soldiers. That feels like enslavement. Coming and knocking on our door. Not just knocking on our door. Taking a hockey stick with a flag tied to it and beating the poopies out of a cop to get into the building. That's what's knocking on our door. And that's the reason that I preached to you today. Oh, what's this? Show Tux TV the love. Yeah. How deep is your love? Here, I'll put this up. I'll put my banner up. All right. So I've got that done. And the moment is in. And if Jesus is Lord, get me the receipts. Show me the receipts, P-Town. BS followed it up with Of the Flies. That's beautiful. All right. Bowtie, bless you. I am going to end this stream, and then we might come back on if Nitty comes on, and we'll do a little after show. If Lord of the Dance. That's right. So I thank you for watching on Nitty and Tux TV's channel tonight. And bow tie blessings to you all. Oh.